Hello and welcome to the UK's only daily climate news show where we track the changes happening to our world right now and meet those coming up with the solutions. And this show aims to take you to the heart of the climate crisis, explain the data driving the changes that are already affecting us, but also show you just how far we've come. And today we're looking at the numbers around Bitcoin because a new initiative's been launched to try to make the cryptocurrency industry 100% renewable. In a moment, we'll look at just how much energy digital currencies use. But first, what is Bitcoin? It's a form of electronic money that no bank or government controls. Bitcoins are essentially computer files stored in a digital wallet app on a smartphone or computer. It's based on blockchain, a database that stores every transaction ever made. And it's possible to buy bitcoins, or they can be created using a computer in a process known as mining. And it's that last process that can use a huge amount of energy with powerful computers programmed to try to generate them. The global electricity consumption of Bitcoin is now greater than the total amount of electricity consumed in Argentina, Sweden and the Netherlands. And China is the centre for Bitcoin mining, responsible for more than 65% of activity every month. So, what does this look like? Our Asia correspondent Tom Cheshire has got exclusive access to a Bitcoin farm.
We can't tell you where exactly in Western China this is. What we're about to see is being kept secret from the authorities.
Welcome to my mining farm. Wow. This is my Bitcoin mining farm.
Bitcoin is a digital currency, but this is where the very real process of mining it happens. Thousands of computers solving mathematical problems and earning Bitcoins as a result, around £80,000 worth each day. But this is a grey area in China, and so this mining farm is hidden inside an industrial site.
The government in China, they shut down some mining farms in Mongolia already, but we don't know what's their next move. So it's better to keep it low. Yeah.
Does the government know about this farm?
Not right now.
Bitcoin mining requires a huge amount of energy. That's why authorities in the province of Inner Mongolia have banned operations like this to meet energy consumption targets. But the price of Bitcoin keeps soaring, and investors keep rushing in. The founder of this company started his first mining farm in Iran, but says that China is safer. The entire site was built in just 2 months. Everyone working on it can be trusted. And because it uses an existing industrial power supply, its electricity consumption shouldn't raise any suspicion. We're in a Bitcoin boom, and this is the frontier. It is dirty, it is noisy, it uses a lot of energy. And there are hundreds of grey sites like this all across China, beyond the reach of the authorities. The question is, what effect that could have on the environment? There are greener ways to mine. This is a huge Bitcoin farm in Sichuan, southwest China. The region has lots of hydropower. So the electricity is green, but also, more importantly, cheap.
Bitcoin is kind of relentless in its drive for efficiency in energy production. Energy consumes majority of the cost of mining Bitcoin. So miners will always find the areas around the world which have low cost and sustainable supply of energy.
The energy here is low cost, but it isn't green. And as long as China keeps building coal power plants, Bitcoin miners will take advantage. A sustainable future for Bitcoin isn't here yet. Tom Cheshire, Sky News, West China.
And you can find out if Tom can describe what Bitcoin is in 10 seconds by watching the weekly climate show on Sky News social channels, our app and our website. Let's take a look now at some of the day's other climate news. And Britain could get the world's first large power station that burns hydrogen. Energy companies SSE Thermal and Equinor want to build 2 plants near Scunthorpe that will make enough low-carbon energy to supply 1 million homes. One plant will use carbon capture technology and the other will be powered by green hydrogen.
Green hydrogen is made out of splitting water. It requires a lot of energy, and that energy needs to be from renewable sources, so green sources, if you like solar and wind. The byproduct of this is only oxygen, so no CO2 handling required.
Bangladesh is one of the countries most vulnerable to climate change, but it's also one of the biggest producers of methane. New satellite images show the 12 highest methane emission rates this year have occurred over the country. The highlighted areas you can see here are plumes of the greenhouse gas, which is up to 84 times more potent than carbon dioxide. Scientists have captured rare footage of what they believe is the world's largest seagrass meadow in the Indian Ocean. Underwater gardens like the Saya de Maya Bank play a vital role in tackling climate change as they absorb huge amounts of carbon dioxide from their surroundings. And calling all beach lovers, Surfers Against Sewage are urging people to take part in a mass clean-up of Britain's seasides. The charity wants to clear litter from 1 million miles of coastline by the end of the year to tackle plastic pollution. And in the first episode of our weekly podcast, Climate Cast, Dr. Freddie Otto tells me how she thinks we should be changing the narrative around climate change. That's out tomorrow, and you can find it wherever you normally get your podcasts from. Now, in November, world leaders will be in Glasgow for the COP26 Climate Summit. They're meant to set out how much they can reduce their nation's emissions by and when. Japan, the world's 5th biggest emitter of greenhouse gases, has already set a goal of being carbon neutral by 2050, and now it wants to make its 2030 target more ambitious. So Japan has already committed to cutting emissions by 26% from 2013 levels by 2030. But they're now looking at whether they can increase that to 45%. Now, the EU has raised its target to cut emissions to 55% from 1990 levels. That's up from 40%. And the UK has announced plans for a 68% reduction in emissions by the end of the decade compared to 1990 levels. Well, joining me now is our climate correspondent, Lisa Holland. So, Lisa, why are these countries setting these targets now?
Well, Anna, all countries who have signed up to the Paris Agreement, which was signed back in 2015, have to come up with what's known as an NDC, which is a nationally determined contribution. In other words, it's by how much countries say they'll reduce their emissions. So countries are coming up with interim targets for 2030. The UK led the way last December, saying that it would reduce its emissions faster than any other major economy. Crucially, we're waiting to hear what the United States promises to reduce its emissions by. Others have already laid theirs out. Countries like Australia and Brazil, which frankly have been condemned as inadequate. The fact of the matter is, though, that countries need to reduce their emissions by 45% within the next 10 years if warming is to be limited to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. And currently, the world is not on that pathway.
Lisa, thank you. Concentrations of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere have hit their highest ever level. The measurements from the Mauna Loa Observatory in Hawaii show global levels of CO2 are now 50% above pre-industrial levels. Last month, atmospheric concentrations of the greenhouse gas averaged 417.14 parts per million. Well, let's bring in Dr. Ella Gilbert now, who's a climate scientist at the University of Reading. And Ella, this is measured then in parts per million. So what does that mean and why is that figure so high?
Yeah, so parts per million is another way of describing a ratio. It's a bit like percent, except that whereas percent means per 100, here we're saying per million. And as you said, concentrations reached a record 417 parts per million, which means we're halfway towards doubling our CO2 emissions since before human activity began. And the reason it's so high is because human activity generates greenhouse gas emissions, and that's especially from burning fossil fuels and destroying natural environments that remove CO2 from the atmosphere.
And Ella, I'm going to take it over to the other side of our studio to our data dashboard here and take a look at this figure here, which is total carbon dioxide emissions in the atmosphere, which is ticking up all the time. So, Ella, is that the same thing?
It's related, but it's not quite the same. So concentrations measure what's currently in the atmosphere, whereas emissions tell us how fast we're adding to the concentration in the atmosphere. So if emissions are positive, as you can see in your charts, then we're adding to atmospheric concentrations of greenhouse gases, which contributes to global warming.
Dr. Ella Gilbert, thanks very much indeed. And you can see our data dashboard at any time and read more about what those numbers mean on our website. That's at skynews.com/climate. Now, in the latest from our Climate Diaries series, former postal worker Ella Daish has been calling on companies to remove plastic from their menstrual products. Her petition to end period plastic highlighted how the waste is even more prevalent on European beaches than discarded plastic straws.
I'm on a menstrual mission to eliminate all plastic from period products. My name's Ella. I'm an environmental activist and founder of the End Period Plastic campaign. I was working a regular day job as a postal worker for Royal Mail. While I was out delivering letters and parcels, I began to notice the amount of waste being thrown away each week was increasing. You might be thinking, why period products? What's so bad about them? They're the 5th most common item found polluting Europe's beaches. They're more commonly found than straws or coffee cups. Tampons and pads are made in their billions, are used for 4 to 8 hours, are disposed of, and can then take over 500 years to break down. My campaign calls on manufacturers and supermarkets to take responsibility and bring about change by removing plastic from their period products. The campaign is leading to significant changes in the period industry. 3 UK retailers removing plastic tampon applicators from their products, saving over 17 tonnes of plastic each year.
Coming up on the Daily Climate Show tomorrow, on the front line of the climate crisis in Central America's dry corridor. We've got a special report from Guatemala, and you can see that here at the same time on Sky News. See you then.